Businesses that do a marketing plan see a 67 times return on investment.
In order to really fully optimize and execute ad campaign, you need to let it run for 3 months minimum.
Be responsive to the marketing agency that you're working with.
You know, there's only 2 things that make money for any business: innovation and marketing. All the rest are just expenses.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. My name's Ian Cantle, and today we're tackling an issue that affects almost every small business owner at some point in their journey: why their marketing just isn't delivering the results they had hoped for. So I employed a little bit of AI magic to gather the latest studies and surveys about small businesses and how they relate to marketing, and I created a compiled list of the top reasons small business marketing isn't working. And we can actually share that in our podcast notes for you. But today, that's what we're going to be discussing, whether it's from feeling overwhelmed by too many options to not having a marketing plan and budget, or the time required to market your business, to simply not knowing what to measure. There are so many reasons marketing fails. But the good news is these challenges can be overcome, and you can do it. So we've gathered a whole bunch of research. We've got our experts. We've got Jeff, Ken, Paul with us today to share their insights. And guys, I thought a good way to start off would be just to ask each of you your opinion on what the top reasons marketing isn't working for people you talk to. Because I think we've all encountered people, they reach out to us because they're like, oh, you're in marketing. This is why marketing doesn't work for me. Or, you know, maybe you guys can share a little bit of the top things you guys have heard.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's almost always they've tried it before, and they think that the only way that really has ever worked for them is referral marketing. I hear that all the time. You know, it's like, you know, I've been burned. I tried a little bit in the past, you know, and you know, when you start to explore that a little bit, you get an understanding of why it failed. Which I think, you know, is the whole purpose of today's episode, is to really kind of dig into that. But yeah, I think, you know, look, for some businesses, if you're content and you can fill your calendar and it's basically just you through referral marketing, being a part of like a BNI or a chamber, and that feeds everything that you need, good for you. But that's a very, very, very small percentage of small businesses that are out there.
Yeah. What about you, Jeff?
I think, you know, time and time again, the biggest thing I see, the root cause, people probably don't even realize it, the root cause is just, it's overwhelming. There's so many moving parts. So what happens is business owners focus on one thing. They're like, I'm going to run some Google ads. It's going to solve all my problems. And, you know, we've talked about it over and over again on the podcast. You know, you need a marketing system. You need to be omni-channel, or at least multi-channel. It's not one thing. It's a lot of things working together. But then that goes back to that overwhelm. There's just so much, and you know, it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. Paul?
Yeah, what they said. And
nothing further to add.
And I think budget's part of it, but I think we're gonna talk about all of this stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I've heard it all too. Like everybody has some sort of opinion. In fact, today I'm on a dental, like a dentist group on Facebook. And I'm always fascinated by not just what the marketers say, because that's probably more disturbing than anything when I hear marketers saying, this is the one shiny object you should be going after. Like, I'm always stunned by that. And I'm stunned by other dentists or other business owners that say, you know, it's this one thing. And just what you guys said, like that's a dangerous approach, because if something works in one market for one particular person, one business, it doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. So let's dig into this big topic and start to eat the elephant one bite at a time. Like Ken's doing. So Jeff, what's the impact of trying to do all your marketing yourself instead of bringing in help or delegating?
Yeah, well, this will dovetail into back to what I just said a minute ago. I think the biggest danger is, well, let's back up a little bit. Let's go to the classic example, you know, Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. A baker goes into business because they want to bake cakes or cookies or pies. They don't go into business because they say, gee, I want to do some marketing, or gee, I think I'll build an accounting system for a bakery. They go into business. Anyone who goes into business because they want to do what they love. They want to do it better than anyone else, whether it's because they came from another job and they just like shook their head at the way it was done and said, I can do it better, or they just want to call their own shots, or they just want to, do their own thing, their way. I guess that's the same thing.
And they want to make money.
But when you go into business, you don't go into business because you want to be a marketer, unless you're like us, right? We're kind of weird that way. But you're faced with all of a sudden you've got to do this. Your business is not going to, magically grow. I've seen so many businesses that are like, well, we're going to build a better mousetrap and people are going to line up to buy it. It's like, oh, well, how are they going to hear about it? How are they going to know you're out there? Well, I'll tell a few people and they'll tell a few people. It's, well, okay, that's going to work for a little bit. Like you said at the top of the show, referrals, but it's not the be all end all. At some point, you're going to, have talked to everyone and they're going to have talked to everyone they know, and you're probably not going to get that kind of traction you want. So then you wind up with, okay, now I've got to do some marketing and I've got to run a business and I've got to do sales. And at some point I've got to do books and paperwork, yada, yada, yada. The biggest impact of trying to do all the marketing yourself is that you carve out little pieces of it. You say, well, I can't do it all. I don't understand it all. Even if I do understand all, I don't have time to do it all. Let me focus on one thing. And now we're back to what I said at the top of the show, right? It's not one thing, it's many things working together. So the impact of trying to do it all yourself is, first off, it's a higher probability, if not the highest probability of failure. If you pick the wrong thing, especially, and as you said, Ian, from your dental group, just because something works in one market for one business today doesn't mean it's going to work in a different market for a different business tomorrow. So there's constantly keeping up with what's going on and experimenting. Again, we're down to time. And if you don't have that time, you pick one tactic, you do it for a little bit, and then you ignore it. You think it's on fire and forget. And then you come back later and you go, oh, gee, wow. I wish I'd realized sooner that I was spending a lot of money not getting any results. I would have changed something. It's back to that time management piece of it. So you can get inconsistent results. You can get, ineffective results, less than efficient, bad use of your money, not really understanding your market, saying the wrong things to the wrong people at the wrong time can kill you. You've got to say the right things to the right people at the right time to get them to do business with you. If you say the wrong thing, if you do it at the wrong time, if it's the wrong message, it can kill you. I mean, it can be totally devastating. And it can even to the point of undoing a lot of hard work that you've done. So your marketing has got to be on point. It's got to be executed consistently. It's got to be in tune with your audience. It's got to be kept up with change. And if you try and do that all yourself while you're running the business and everything else, you risk burnout. You risk, the ability to learn and grow and keep up with changes because you're operating in a bubble. And there's just so many ways it can go wrong. I understand that a lot of small businesses, they have to start out. It's sweat equity until you can afford to bring somebody in or hire somebody. But even a coach, even somebody working with you on an office hours basis or get into a mastermind group or something can help a lot with that. You can't really do it all yourself. And if you are, you can't do it for long and it's not going to be efficient. It's going to cost you money.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to bring up a point, that Guy Kawasaki made a couple of weeks ago on our podcast. People have a natural affinity. They're either really good at doing and building, or they're really good at sales, but they're rarely excellent at both. You've got people who can certainly do both. And as you get started as an entrepreneur, sure, you've got to kind of balance that. You've got to do some sweat equity and whatnot, but you need to come to a conclusion pretty quickly. Are you really good at the visionary, at the building and the creating, or are you really good at sales? And then you need to go get help, whether it's bringing somebody in-house or hiring the right marketing consultant or agency. It's just the reality. We can't do it all.
Yeah.
You get to that point, like Gary Keller talked about in his book, The One Thing. Gary Keller, Keller Williams Real Estate, one of the largest real estate companies in the world. You're pointing. You're like number one now. Oh, one thing. Yeah, it's the one thing.
No,
is one thing.
In excess, that's it. It's the one.
His one thing at a point was to figure out what he needed to do to take everything off his plate and make the business grow. That was his one thing. What can you do? The one thing you can do that makes everything else irrelevant or a non-factor. And that means you get to a point where you're going to bring in help. You're going to hire an executive team. You're going to hire outside help. You're going to hire consultants. So the challenge then for business owners that I would put out there is figure out the fastest way to get to where you can, execute your one thing and build that team, bring in that outside help or hire that. It doesn't have to be outside. But.
Yeah. And if your objective is to grow your business and your business doesn't exist in a bubble, doesn't exist in isolation, then you're up against your competition. And if your competition invests in somebody that really knows what they're doing from a marketing perspective, you personally don't stand a chance. And I think just to help relate that to your own world, whatever business you're in, if you're a dentist and you only do, one implant surgery a year, one implant treatment a year, you're not going to be as good at that or as quick at that as an the person that does it all the time, right? So if that's all they focus on, they're going to be excellent at it, right? If you're I'm a DIYer, I do a bunch of stuff around my house, but I always joke because it takes me so long to do it because I have to plan it out because I don't do it every day. So, if I'm putting in a deck, I have to map it all out. What am I going to do? But a person that does a deck every single day, multiple times a day throughout the week, every day of the year, they are excellent at it. You watch a YouTube video and you're like, wow, they could do it in a day. It takes me 3 weeks. And I think that's a really good takeaway for businesses to understand that, yes, you can learn to be a marketer, but that's not business, so you need to be thoughtful about that. And the people that are under you are probably not hired to be marketers either. And do you want to train them all, every day to become a marketer, or do you want to train them to be excellent at what they do to serve your customer base? So just some thoughtful approaches to that.
That's a good point. When you have limited resources, where is the best place to apply them?
Yeah. Yeah. Ken, why do you think so many, and just so our listeners know, some of these questions are phrased almost as an absolute, right? Why? So this question is, why do you think so many small businesses avoid creating a clear marketing plan, and what happens when they don't? The reason it's phrased that way is because those studies that we pulled data from, they support this, that there's a stat that if you businesses that do a marketing plan see a 67 times return on investment, whereas businesses that do not see that, right? So that's a big number. And so that's why it's phrased this way. I just thought I'd explain that to our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I think there are lots of reasons why. The first is always, just because of time and because you're being pulled in so many different directions. That leads to to another problem, which is you just don't have the breadth of understanding of what it takes to win in marketing. And that's through no fault of your own. It's just there are a lot of moving pieces, a lot more than many people think about and realize. And even though there's some nice consolidation of some tools that can make your life simpler, when you look at the overall landscape of marketing tools, it's just exploding rapidly. So how do you choose? Do you just, let's just take AI, for example. Are you going to do Claude, or are you going to do Chat GPT? Are you going to do Google Gemini? Are you going to use Constant Contact or MailChimp for your marketing, for your email marketing? Are those even the right platforms to use? Because they have certain limitations and are missing other key features that might be essential. So it really, I think, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's a big problem. And so then when you do hire a marketing consultant, agency, fractional CMO, whatever it might be, I think many small businesses assume that they're going to walk in the door with a marketing plan. And they may have a base marketing plan. We have a base marketing plan. We know the things that tend to work for home services contractors, but you have to dial in that plan to make it relevant to the business to get the most out of it. And so, we've talked about, there's this concept our good friend Ray Perry talks about, beware of tool vendors. If you've got somebody who walks in the door and they're saying, here's your marketing strategy, and it's just to run Facebook ads, you know what? They're a tool vendor. They are not, have their own best interest at heart, not yours, because they're pushing the solution that they have, and they're a one-trick pony, and that's really all that they can do. I see this all the time. People fall for it all the time. They fall for pretty dashboards. They fall for sexy social media content and video marketing ideas that cost way too much at the expense of being able to deliver and do all of the other things that are necessary for marketing. So I think, you can't just figure it out as you go. I mean, you can go into ChatGPT and you can ask it to create a marketing plan for you, and it'll give you an 80% probably good marketing plan with all, several of the right things to do. But again, if you don't have expertise to implement every element of that marketing plan, and then most importantly, integrate them so that you get the force amplification that is really the thing that makes digital marketing really, really go. You're missing out on a tremendous opportunity, and you're probably going to get pretty frustrated because you're going to be spending a lot of money, maybe 5 or 6 main channels, all performing less than optimally. So without a plan, you do really run the risk of getting to failure faster, spending a lot more money than you need to, and missing the amplification that can happen. I know we're going to talk about budgets here, so I'm not going to get into that quite yet, but you have to think about what outcomes do you want? And I'm constantly amazed when I start talking with a business, how will you define success? What do you need to see to consider a program be successful? Is it X number of phone calls? Is it booked appointments? Is it closed revenue? Is it increased profitability? It's not just all of the above. It's like, no, we have to dial it in and figure out specifics, because that's going to help us design the right marketing plan to help. I think, when we do go look at some of these statistics, Ian, as you mentioned, the success rate of businesses that do have a marketing plan is really pretty staggering in terms of, they're like almost 7 times more likely to succeed. And yet most small businesses don't really have a documented marketing plan. And so you've got to start really kind of tackling that and realizing, even if you are comfortable, some people and some businesses may already have, again, I think this is the exception rather than the norm, but many small businesses may already have all of the right people in place. They just need that plan and some guidance and oversight to really move the train down the tracks to accomplish the goal that everybody wants to accomplish. If you don't have that, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to literally say, do I have what it takes to achieve these goals? And chances are, if you haven't achieved them yet, you don't have what it takes. And it's okay. I'm not going to go put a roof on my house. I don't have that expertise. But if I have a leak in my ceiling, I'm going to hire somebody who has the right expertise. And hopefully they won't just sell me a quick fix. Hopefully they'll go and do some diagnostics, develop a plan, identify, other issues that might be brewing and things to be concerned about. So just, it's easy to skip the plan. People want to just run right to getting results. And a plan executed correctly has both short-term wins, quick wins, but also a longer-term strategy to really optimize and dial in your return on investment.
I think it's also worth digging into a little bit by, when you talk about a marketing plan, what does that mean? Because it means different things to different people, right? For some, it's a very detailed, everything they're going to do every day of every week of the next year. And that old saying that no battle plan survives the first skirmish kind of holds true. And then the second saying that goes with that is that the value is in the planning. It's in the really thinking everything through. You can't do a good job, like I was talking earlier, about diving in on one tactic. I can't handle it all, so I'll just do Facebook ads. You can't, do that if you don't have a strategy of how you're going to implement, and is it the right thing to do? And when you do it, what are you going to say, and how are you going to say it, and what do you want people to do next, and how are you going to lead them down the path? So that's the planning, right? It's not necessarily a detailed execution implementation. In fact, if you jump right to that, if you jump into a detailed, okay, I bought into omnichannel, I know I need to do email, I know I need to do social media, I know I need a website, I know I need, Google ads, but you don't have that strategy guiding it, you're still likely to fail at one or more of those tactics. So I think that critical analysis of where do we want to go in the business? How do we want to get there? As you said, Ken, measuring, what are the metrics along the way that are going to tell us how we're doing, but also starting with that top level vision and everything that just drives so many other things. And I think that scares people away. They're like, oh, I don't want to do that touchy-feely stuff, right? I just want to dig in and sell some stuff. And that means I got to run ads to do it. So I think that's a contributor. But that planning, if not a formal plan, that planning, the strategy, and then at least the implementation, plan a little more formalized is absolutely critical. And it's not just touchy-feely stuff. It's what's going to make or break your marketing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I think of marketing as still creative. It's like, can you build me these beautiful web pages? Can you create these gorgeous postcards that I might drop in the mail or whatever it might be? Marketing has not been that for a very long time. That's a critical element of it, but marketing has to include project management, technical prowess, and the creative aspect. And that all has to be guided and driven through strategy. And strategy is developing a plan that can be managed and tracked through project management, leveraging the right set of tools, defining the right roles. If you come up with a plan, you still have to make assignments. Who's going to do it? Who has the expertise to do it? What tools are they going to use? How much is that going to cost when you cumulatively put all this together? That's why you need a plan. And then you need to sanity check that plan based on, what is the potential return on investment? What is the lifetime value of a client? What is your average transaction size? If you're not doing any of this sanity checking as you're building these plans, you're going to create a plan that's going to lead to failure very fast.
And at the very least, breaking it into stages. Here's what we can do right now.
Right.
Once we hit these certain metrics, here's what we're going to do next.
Yeah.
So you're planning the growth, you're planning the expansion. I mean, you don't have to, back to your, eating the elephant, you don't have to do it all at once, but you need to be thinking ahead, and you need to have some triggers defined for how you're going to get there. Otherwise, it's like, driving, looking in the rearview mirror.
One of the things I do come across a lot in the industry is that agencies or kind of small M marketing vendors, right, who just focus on one thing or maybe a couple things, they talk strategy, but what they're talking about is kind of a small S strategy, just to use that term again. But because what you guys are talking about is like, you can't even develop your strategy until you've done the research to understand, what are the goals of the business? How do we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace compared to the competition? Where do we sit against the competition right now? Because you can't actually, it's like a general on preparing for a battle, right? You can't figure out, how are we going to position ourselves? What kind of, if you decide that ads are important, you can't prepare the ads unless you know what your unique differentiation is going to be in the marketplace. Like, everything rolls back up to who are your ideal clients? How are you going to speak to them in a unique way that sets you apart from the competition? And all of that comes from that strategic component. Does it take time, energy, and money? Absolutely. But most of the time and energy is not yours. It's your marketing agency, like any of the marketing guides on this podcast, can do this kind of work for you. And then it's really just, money to fuel that investment. But it's probably cheaper than most of our listeners can imagine. So it's an investment well spent, and will guide everything you do moving forward. Paul, lots of owners say, we tried marketing, but it didn't work, which is, pretty a fantastical statement that marketing doesn't work. What do you see as the most common reasons? Because usually they're talking about specific campaigns. What are the most common reasons campaigns fail to get traction?
How much time do we have?
Well, be concise.
Well, actually, I want to address, something Ken said about the tool vendors, and people fall for it all the time. And I think part of the reason for that is that it's quick, it's easy, and they can check off that box. I'm running Facebook ads, my marketing's done. And I think that's part of it. But the other thing, or some of the other things, is they don't give campaigns enough time to work. And Ken has mentioned this in the past, like with Google Ads. Google says, oh, hey, here's $100 worth of ad spend. You can't accomplish anything with $100 worth of Google ad spend, okay? Nothing's going to happen. Hell, some industries, it's $50 a click. So, yeah, exactly. But they don't give it time to work. And I think when someone like us comes in there and says, okay, we need to do a marketing strategy, I think a lot of business owners kind of freak out. They're like, it's like, well, that sounds like work, and you're going to ask me a lot of questions I don't have the answers to. And well, that's why you need a marketing strategy, because you probably don't have the answers to some of those questions that we're going to ask you. And we've talked about this too, trying to be everywhere at once. And if your ideal customer isn't on a certain platform, don't spend a lot of time and money on that platform. And that goes back to the strategy. Where are your ideal clients? And there's a good chance they are all over the place, depending on the industry you're in, but it's something you have to know. And I mentioned budget earlier. Marketing is not cheap. It doesn't have to be outrageously expensive, but you do have to have a realistic budget, and your expectations have to be in line with that budget. And your branding has to be consistent, and your messaging has to be consistent, and you have to track results, because if you don't track what's working and what's not working, then you're not going to know what worked. So I think those are some of the biggest things. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Well, we've talked about this before, but, like if you're going to do paid ads, they're not going to work right out of the box. Now, you might get some initial results, and that can be very deceiving. But in order to really fully optimize and execute a well-run ad campaign, you need to let it run for 3 months minimum. Every ad platform on the planet right now is using AI to optimize the ad performance and the ad delivery, and trying to help you get it in front of the right audience. And they're going to do things on the back end, but you also need to be reviewing those changes and recommendations, with human experts. And in order to optimize, you have to have data. You can't have data 2 weeks after you launch a campaign, unless you have a massive budget, which small businesses don't have massive budgets. So I think it's super important that you realize, look, if you can't let a Facebook campaign or a Google ad campaign run for 3 months and make the investment level that has been recommended to you, save your money and wait, or look at another alternative, because you're going to get poor results and you're not going to be happy. And then you're going to say, marketing doesn't work.
Well, I would even...
Advertising didn't work, but, subtle difference.
Yeah, I would even say that in some instances, it's a minimum of 6 months, because if you're running Performance Max campaigns, Google will tell you, if you make a change to a Performance Max campaign, you should give it a month for the algorithm to figure it out.
And then it has to optimize it after that time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think I've probably heard, and maybe you guys have as well. Um, every single type of marketing, uh, it's been told to me that that doesn't work, and yet here we are making it work for our clients, right? So I've heard direct mail doesn't work. I've heard digital marketing as general doesn't work. I've heard websites don't work. SEO doesn't work. Google Ads doesn't work. Like every possible thing I've heard said doesn't work. And yet it is working. You just have to do it well in order to beat the competition. Because again, none of these things exist in a bubble, right? Like your Google ads are in a very competitive marketplace. And the more competitive marketplace it is, the harder it is to get clicks, or the more expensive it is to get clicks. And the same thing with SEO. If you're in a very competitive marketplace, the harder it is to rise up to the top of the rankings. But with the right strategies, you can do it. You can outperform your competition. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't just discount, don't bring your own personal bias against marketing as a whole, or a specific area of marketing, because if you find the right marketing partner who can come alongside you and develop your strategy and execute for you, you will be amazed at the results you will get, because they'll be able to diagnose the symptoms, put the right treatment in place, and get you results.
If I could add in one more, marketing doesn't work. I'll be a little aggressive. I'll put it back on the business owners in some cases, because I've seen business owners that go, oh, I don't want to do that. Here's what I want to do. Well, it's not about what you want to do. It's about what's going to work with your target audience, right? You've got to tie everything back. This goes back to the preceding question, the importance of planning and strategy. You've got to tie things back to your ideal clients, your ideal client personas, and get in their heads and figuring out what will work for them to reach them, to get your message across to them. And, if you don't like TikTok ads, you don't have to like TikTok ads. But if you're going after an audience that's all over TikTok, you probably better look into it, right? You don't have to like Google ads. Oh, I hate Google ads. I don't want to just give all my money to Google. Google's rich enough. Well, you know what? If people are doing searches and you're not showing up in SEO, then ads is the only shot you got. So don't be in that mindset of I want to do what I want to do and nothing else matters, because what you want to do may not matter, but it's what the clients, your ideal clients you're trying to attract, are paying attention to.
Yeah, and there's one other thing I'd add. I didn't know if I should say it here or on the next question, but be responsive to the marketing agency that you're working with. Whoever you're working with, if they say, hey, we need this information or that information, and it's only something the business can provide, and 3 months later you get that to them, you're not going to have good results.
Yeah. The other thing I think to keep in mind is marketing only works when there's demand, right? And so if you have to spend all of your marketing budget educating and not addressing and fulfilling the demand that's out there, you're not going to be successful in your marketing. You're going to spend a tremendous amount of money. So just because you can build it, doesn't mean that that's what people want. You need to understand, is there a need? Is there a demand for that? Right now, we've talked about this in the past. One of the highest in-demand skills that a lot of small businesses are looking for is help in implementing a CRM. But if you're trying to talk about, all of, we can give you this feature and that feature and this feature and that feature, but you don't really talk about how you're solving the fundamental problem of why people feel like they need help implementing a CRM, you're going to be missing the boat. You're going to be spending tremendous amounts of money. So, you can't take marketing out, just on its own. It has to be relevant to something that is highly desired with strong demand, or it's not going to be successful. So sometimes that means you have to step back. Am I creating the right products or solutions? Is it something people really want?
That's why I love in the and I learned this from John Jantz at Duct Tape Marketing when I went through his training, right? But I've held this near and dear to my heart when I've been doing strategy for clients because I think it's so powerful. And one of the exercises that John had us do through a strategy first blueprint when we were learning that was to actually set up interviews with existing clients. So if you're a plumber, you would have me. If I was your marketing agency and we're developing your plan, we would call, or you would set up Zoom calls with some of your clients so that we can dig in and understand and ask questions. First of all, that they would answer to us in ways that they probably wouldn't answer to you as the business because they're worried about hurting your feelings. Or we just have, because we do this all the time, the ways that we can ask questions often uncover, gold nuggets of information that, in my time when I've done this, we've uncovered whole service offering opportunities because the clients are like, these guys are fantastic at this. I love them. If only they could do this service as well. And then we take that back to the business and we're like, you guys are leaving some money on the table. If you want to, provide this additional service that actually fits with your core service offering, you guys can actually capture more of the wallet share of this client and provide a better service to them. So I think there's lots of opportunity there. But as you said, Ken, like if you don't dig into the audience, if you don't ask questions, if you don't have a way of doing that, how are you ever going to know? And this is why I love too having as a marketing agency, we through that process, we talk to the front line salespeople as well, or customer service people, because those are the guys too that are hearing all of the good stuff and the bad stuff. And they're also hearing some competitive intelligence as well. So, in addition to all the data we can capture, these kind of soft people approach as well is a fantastic addition to the strategic, mining of information. Jeff, this is a really good question because people leave a lot of money on the table related to existing customers. So why is focusing on existing customers and retention marketing so often neglected, even though it can be so profitable and even more profitable than acquiring a new client?
Yeah. This is a interesting question. It comes up time and time again. And the answers seem so obvious, but then it keeps coming up time and time again.
Yeah.
Statistics show it's, I think a factor of 6 or 7 times easier to retain a client than it is to get a new one. But then, there's this client churn question and this, why is, customers being neglected and then they wind up jumping ship, the churn problem. It's, I think part of it that, the thrill of the chase, a lot of people get energized by putting deals together, by doing, outreach, prospecting, networking, meeting with people, developing solutions, writing proposals, closing the sale. They live for the sale, right? Well, retaining an existing customer is another form of sale. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the ongoing recurring revenue stream in your business. It's maybe not the sexy part of sales. And therefore it gets neglected. And the sad thing is it doesn't have to be neglected because it's so easy to, maintain those relationships. That's really what it's about, is maintaining good relationships with your existing clients. So, carve out a little bit of time, use it to nurture relationships. Don't just assume that customers, once you get them, are going to be loyal forever. They're not necessarily going to stick around, especially if somebody else starts calling on them, right? If somebody starts calling on them and they say, hey, we've got this really new thing, you really ought to look at it. And they go, yeah, my existing guy's okay, but I really haven't heard from him for about 3 years. Yeah, I'll take a look. I mean, right there, you may have just lost a customer, right? So do everything you can to stay top of mind with your existing clients and keep them on the hook. And as I said, that doesn't have to be hard. It goes back to, Ken mentioned CRMs earlier. It goes back to leverage your CRM. Put in anniversary dates of signups, of becoming a first customer, of last appointment. Put in triggers to follow up if you haven't been in touch with them for, X number of weeks or more. Just a simple email or a phone call, and those can be even automated. I don't know if I'd automate the outgoing phone call, because that sounds like a robot, but for sure, an email, just a checking in. Hey, just, thought I'd check in, see how things are going. Let me know if you want to talk, For some businesses, it does mean actively scheduling regular appointments. Keep your clients. If you've got 10,000 clients, you're maybe not going to schedule an appointment with each one every week. But if you have 30 or 40, maybe you can schedule 2 or 3 a week and just rotate around. So make it a point to stay in touch and make your clients, your customers feel valued. That's really what it's about. And there's a lot of ways to do that with anniversary reminders, with, maybe hey, we haven't heard from you for a while. Just here's a little bonus. Come on back and, do something. We'll give you a 5% off. You're, an e-commerce store or something like that. You'll see them do those kinds of things. But leverage the systems that you've got. And if you don't have one, put one in place. Get a CRM. They're not all that expensive, considering the value they can bring you in terms of retaining those clients. And then, loyalty programs, just any kind of recognition, loyalty, reminding people that they are valued and important is what it's about. It's about keeping the relationships going.
One of the things I've always been surprised at, both when I was in the corporate world and now, I've been doing this for 10 years as a marketing agency, marketing consultant, is, and I see this in myself too. I make assumptions, and I think almost every business does this. We make assumptions that our clients, customers, patients know all of our services because they're on our website. They might be in our office or waiting room or whatever type of business we're in. But the simple fact is that they don't. And the idea is that you have to constantly be educating your own clients on what your service offering is, because they, as you said, Jeff, they are being bombarded every week or at least every month by one of your competitors, whether it's through direct mail or whatever it is. And no doubt those guys are showing their full offering. And if you don't position yourself and keep educating your clients.
Had Ian freeze up here for just a second.
He's good. I think I might be on your end.
Back?
I wasn't frozen, I don't think, was I?
No, I think your internet's unstable, Ken.
Oh, well, all right.
That's okay. We'll have a
better
little
the internet than you.
Yeah, true.
That's right. You're unstable. Anyways, that was pretty much my point, is don't neglect educating your own customers over and over and over with your services, regardless of the industry you're in, because they will not know your full service offering. And it's all about getting the message across at the right time with the right person in order to get them to move forward.
Two points relative to that, Ian. One is that simple act of nurturing and keeping the relationships open can lead to more frequent sales. Again, it depends on the business, of course, but it can lead to more frequent sales. Somebody may come and do business with you once a quarter, but if you do some outreach and let them know what's going on, then maybe they're going to come twice a quarter, right? And also, if you remind them about what you do and who you are, and specifically if you even ask in a low-key way, it can drive a referral business. And then the other thing that came to mind when you were talking about letting customers know about what's new in your business is find out what's new in theirs, right? Again, depending on the type of business you are, but it works both ways. You don't always want to be, let me tell you all about me, and then, okay, enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me? It needs to work both ways. And learning about your customers, showing interest, that's another way to build the rapport.
I think there are a lot of businesses out there that, email marketing is clearly one of the best ways to kind of stay in contact and facilitate customer relationships over a period of time. And I think a lot of people feel like that's slick and sleazy and salesy because they personally don't like to get emails. And it's like, if all you ever do is say, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, and that's your weekly email that you send out, well, of course, people are going to like that. But if you're adding value, if you're giving them tips, you're helping them find new ways to use a product that they purchased from you, or ways to make sure that, the service that they got from you is still, what they expected, and maybe even, as you've mentioned, Ian, work in some of those ideas. It's like, okay, you took care of this problem. Did you realize that, this is the number one thing that everybody's doing in this market after they get this done? And give them a good educational piece of information that helps them. They may not act on it. They may not be ready to act on it. Some people are going to be immediately ready to act on it. And again, it all is relevant to the nature of your business. So, if you're a chiropractor or a dentist and you send out a reminder, about 4 months after they got their last check-in, or teeth cleaning or whatever, you're probably going to have a pretty good response rate for people saying, "Ooh, you know what? It's only a couple of months. I need to go ahead and get that on the calendar." And chiropractors are very much that same way. So, you just, again, this is all part of your marketing plan that you have to have in place. If you don't have these things in place, life and business gets in the way, and you're going to forget about a lot of these things, and that ultimately can be very costly.
Yeah. Ken, I thought this was an interesting question, because when we broke down the emotions of what people feel about marketing and that holds them back, fear was way up there. Fear of not doing the right thing, fear of doing the right thing and getting too much business.
Right.
But there's this other one, that how does the fear of spending money hold businesses back from marketing success? And what's your advice for overcoming that fear?
Yeah, well, I think it's partly a fundamental misconception of what marketing is and can be. It drives me nuts. This is the thing that's probably driven me the craziest over the 20 years that I've been doing this.
Is that why you're unstable?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that is, businesses will make an investment in getting a building and spending a lot of money on rent, and then not thinking that they should be spending the equivalent amount or similar amount in their digital presence to help people find and go to the damn place of business that they're at in the first place. It's insane. And so, people have this fear. And look, the reality is, there are a lot of really bad marketers out there. And there is a very low threshold for people to claim that they're a marketer, a digital marketer, or a Google ad expert, whatever it may be. There are some things that you can do to kind of vet them and find out if that's really the case. But even if they have a certification, it doesn't mean they're good. It just means they're maybe good at taking a test. And so, the fear of spending the money, people need to look at marketing as an investment, not as an expense. And they look at it and they see it as an expense. Advertising is an expense, and advertising may be a necessary component of your overall growth strategy. And the reason I say advertising is an expense is because once you stop advertising, it's done. You haven't built any assets. Marketing, if you're investing in your website, if you're writing blog content, if you're creating videos, you're building assets that have a cumulative effect and impact over time. And hopefully, when you do these the right way, you can reuse them, repurpose them for, have them be evergreen and last for longer periods of time. So I think a lot of people don't see marketing in that way. They think it's an expense, and they think it's a necessary evil. And so it's like their thought is, okay, well, since it's a necessary evil, I'm going to spend the minimum amount that I have to just because I got to do it, And so you're already setting yourself up for failure by doing that. I think the other thing is, a lot of businesses nobody tells them this when they launch their business. It drives me nuts. But you need to, you're told when you start your business, you need to get a lawyer, you need to get a CPA, you need to do this, you need to get that, but they don't tell you need to budget X amount of money for your marketing. And so most small businesses don't really think about what that is. And then it's hard for them to come up with a budget because they also don't think about what is the value of a client for them. What is the average transaction size? How frequently are those transactions taking place? Do people refer you? That adds to the cumulative overall revenue generated from that one potential customer that you have. And so without that, it's very difficult to have a budget. It's also very difficult to have a budget if you really don't understand what your overall total costs are in delivering the services. You might know, if you're a roofer, you're going to know how much you have to pay to get shingles and do this and that. And you might figure out, how much it costs for labor, but you may not be calculating in lost drive time, going from one job to the next, where they could have been doing revenue generating activities, and instead they're creating expenses because they're going from point A to point B and not making money. They're actually spending money. So it's a fundamental business problem. And, businesses need to understand this, and you need to look at, the other thing is, are you selling the right products? Are they the profitable ones? Are they the ones, is there a path for you to sell something to get up to the point where, you remove risk? A lot of times the thing that keeps people from moving forward is and risk. And so if you don't have a plan to let them test the waters, make an investment, see how it works before you ask them to go write that big check. As the digital marketers guys say, a lot of people just walk in and say, "Are you ready to marry me?" Well, if that's your marketing strategy and sales strategy, no matter how much money you spend on marketing, you're probably not going to have success. So you've got to map out the buyer's journey and kind of calculate that out, and then you have to figure out what all is required to make that happen. That's complex, and that scares the crap out of people. They don't know what to factor in to build all of this out, and so you got to understand, return on investment. You've got to understand all of the elements, all of the tool costs, the personnel costs, the advertising costs, the production costs, all of that, and then kind of bounce that off. So I've been kind of rambling on, but fear is probably the biggest inhibitor of people being successful in marketing, because they've tried it before and they feel like it's failed, even though they didn't maybe really select the right thing, or they're scared to invest the money because, look, I'm a business owner too. If you ask me to write a check to do $5,000 a month in Facebook ads, that's going to scare the crap out of me. I'll be honest with you. So am I going to go do that? Am I going to go rush to do that? No, and nor should you. But you do need to calculate out what kind of return on investment it is, what your client acquisition costs are, and all of that kind of stuff. So you got to have a budget. And, there's no magic formula, but a good rule of thumb is, for a business that's been around for a little while, for a startup, these numbers are not going to make sense. They need to be much higher. But if you've been around for a while, plan on allocating 6 to 10 to 15% of your overall annual revenue and put that into a marketing budget. And that sounds like a big scary number, but honestly, it's the reality. Numbers, and people who do this all the time, those are solid planning numbers. Now, that doesn't mean that's the ultimate amount that you wind up spending, but be prepared for that. Set your expectations accordingly. If you, there's a statistic out there that only 11% of businesses who spent less than 5% of the revenue succeed in their marketing. 11%. So if you're spending 5% or less of your annual revenue on marketing, you're going to fail 90% of the time, roughly. Wow. So you got to take this seriously, and you need to work with somebody who can help you put together the right budget. Marketing's complicated, and there are a lot of people who try to sell you the tool vendor type solutions, the one-offs, And that can be a good way to get started, but it has to be part of a master plan. Jeff, you talked about it before. I'm a big fan of bootstrapping. It's like if you only have $500 a month to spend, pick a strategy that works for you, $500 a month. Make sure that you allocate some of the money that comes back into your business from that spend and reinvest it to continue to grow and build and execute more of a comprehensive marketing strategy. That's a very realistic plan for a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses are like, well, I don't want to spend all of this money. But because if you calculate it out, 6% or 10% of 10% of $1 million is a substantial chunk of money. Well, that's why you need a marketing plan, because the marketing plan is going to validate how is that money going to be beneficial and put money back into your business and help you grow. Not only increase your revenue, ideally increase your profitability.
I want to point out that marketing budgets, it's inverse too, unfortunately. The smaller the business, the bigger a percentage they're going to need. Because think about it from absolute numbers. You used 500. I say 500 is even on the low, and you can't get a lot done for 500.
Right.
1,000, you get a little more done. But if you're a $50,000 a year business, that's your startup, right? $10,000 for marketing, that's 20%, right? If you're $1 million business, on the lower end, 5%. Now you're talking 50,000, 8,000, or 4,000 a month. That's more substantial. So, unfortunately, the smaller the business, generally to do a lot of marketing, it's a higher percentage. So the goal should be to allocate really everything you can to fuel your growth. Potentially even operating at a break even or maybe even a loss. You see a lot of startup businesses that have deep pockets that are well funded will maybe operate at a loss for 2 or 3 years because they are doing what they need to do to lay the groundwork and lay the foundations. I'm not saying every small business should or could do that, but you need to have that mindset that early on it's going to be a lot of effort or a lot of money or both. And then over time, as things build up, then the percentages will come down, the profitability will increase. That's economies of scale.
Yeah. I mean, tragically, so many small businesses fail when they get started, and it's because it's all they can do. They put all of their money that they could just to launch, and they have nothing left to build awareness and drive traffic and generate sales. So you've got a budget for that. You have to take that as a critical element. If you're opening up a restaurant and you've literally spent every dime you've got and all your loans and all that kind of stuff, just getting the doors open and hiring your staff for that first night, you're going to be in real trouble.
You'll have a good first night, but then what?
and then the other thing, a good rule of thumb, I think Mike McAllowitz, who we've had on the show, and Donald Miller, from StoryBrand, their recommendations are you need to have in cash reserves 2 to 3 months worth of operating expenses in reserve that you can tap into if you need to. And you can tap into that, because look, we're in a world right now where the economy is kind of squirrely. We don't really know what it's doing. I mean, we've got record stock market performance, but at the same time, customer, confidence can be very low. There are a lot of people who are very skittish about moving forward, doing certain things. You need to have money to be able to weather the storm. And when the economy turns bad, if you haven't, I mean, this is just part of it is just you might to create a good marketing budget. And I'm speaking to all the accountants out there, please take this seriously and make sure that your clients are budgeting money for marketing that they can actually functionally work with. Set aside that money, have a plan, have those resources, but then also constantly challenge yourself to reduce operational costs, to improve customer satisfaction and delivery while you're able to drive those prices down. And I mean, honestly, right now, and a lot of businesses aren't going to want to hear this, but AI is your best friend, and it's here. You're already using it. You're already taking advantage of it, whether you realize it or not, whether you like it or not. And if you're not taking advantage of it to improve customer experience, reduce operational costs, do a better job of capturing leads, you're missing massive amounts of opportunity.
And you made me think of a couple of things that are all kind of interrelated. I have a fractional CFO, finance world colleague, and the first thing he does when he gets a new client is he goes to the bank and he gets some line of credit rather.
Okay.
Businesses need capital to operate, and businesses that don't have capital to operate are going to have a problem. So now there's two things that are related to that. One is if you're saying, oh, I don't want to get a line of credit because what if I lose it all? Well, that says you've probably got another issue that you need to address in your business. If you're not confident enough in your business that you're not going to lose a line of credit, there's probably some other operational issue, production issue, sales talent issue, something else going on in the business that needs to be addressed. So that's where my CFO friend will work with them. He'll go, we want to get you a line of credit, but we want to make sure that it's secure and it's not going to be at risk. So let's look at the other aspects of your business.
Yeah, and please set aside 2 to 3 months worth of operating, so that you can weather storms or tap into it to make investments to grow.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The saying, it takes money to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said there were two things, and I think I wove them both in. So I'll see you back my time.
Well, I was glad you mentioned, both of you mentioned accountants and fractional CFOs and stuff. One of the interesting things I've run into is where accountants have actually kiboshed marketing plans because they only see it as an expense, and it can be a large item on your expense sheet, right? But I liked your plea to accountants because I'm going to give one too, and that's both to the business owner and the accountants. Please do not, first of all, give marketing advice, the accountants, and secondly, for the business owners, please do not listen to marketing advice from your CPAs. They can help you budget. Absolutely. They can help you figure out, this is the amount of money I have to invest, but your marketing agency, your marketing consultant will help you put those dollars to best use to turn them into more money to reinvest, right? And if you don't do that, if suddenly you say, whoa, that's a big expense item, you're just going to stop your marketing altogether and you're going to get crushed by your competition eventually. It just doesn't work.
I will temper that a little bit and say there's a difference between accountants and CFOs, fractional CFOs. Accountants, by their nature, are very conservative. They want to be letter of the law, by the book, keep you out of trouble. That's what's drilled into their head, right? Now, I'm not saying take unnecessary risks, but a fractional CFO is going to look at the overall health and the options and the different possibilities that can come into play in the financial world to maximize the use of capital and the growth of the business. So it's almost two different but related mindsets.
I agree to that, Jeff, but I still think they make horrible marketing decisions and budget decisions because they don't understand, they have no concept of what a particular marketing strategy can actually be the common return from those. They still see it as an expense item, even though it's an investable expense item. Yeah. I think that's what I agree, though. There is a big difference. The accountant's
going to look at your Google ad spend and go, cut it 10%. Right. And the CFO is going to look at it and go, okay, are you getting the most you can? And what would happen if we increased it? And then how do we move money around to be able to increase it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, we have one more question. Unless, Paul, did you want to jump in on that question first that we just covered? Did you have anything to add?
No, I'd offend accountants if I did.
Okay, good. So they're very smart people. So Paul, what are your best tips for staying consistent with marketing, especially when the business gets busy or other priorities compete for attention, which is very common?
Yeah, a few things. Treat it like it's non-negotiable. It has to be done. Block out time each week. Put it on your calendar. Put together a content calendar, or have whoever you're working with put together a content calendar. It doesn't have to be complicated, and it's not set in stone because things change. The world's a very dynamic place. Use scheduling tools, automate anything you can, everywhere you can. And if you can't, then delegate it or outsource it. We talked about CRMs a million times in the past, and they can be your best friend. I was talking to a client on Monday. He's had a CRM for a while. kind of sort of used it, and then he wouldn't use, then he'd stop using it, then he'd go back to using it, and he's really been diving into it now and really learning what it can do for him. And I was talking to him on Monday, and when a lead came into the CRM through a form submission or whatever, or someone called him, just picked up the phone and called him, and they put them into the CRM, then he was going over to his operational software and adding them in there again manually. And then he did a really good job setting up a pipeline for his business. And then he was taking the contact cards, as it's called in this one, and manually moving them between the stages. And it's like, and I said, we can automate all of that through a combination of Zapier and the CRM itself. So now when a lead comes into the CRM, it's automatically, that contact information is automatically put into his operational software. And then based on the triggers, whatever the customer or prospect does, they're automatically moved through that pipeline. And that probably saved him 5-6 hours a week just by doing that. So automation is your best friend.
Yeah,
or one of your best friends.
Business processes, is important. And
right.
some businesses may have those documented, but again, when you get busy, things are going to fall through the cracks. That's why, Paul, you're exactly right. Automating things that you can, when you can, where you can, it helps to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. And that's, the one thing that I see all the time with small businesses is there are a lot of leaky elements to that business, especially when it comes to leads and sales and automation, AI, business processes, integrated digital marketing with amplification plugs those leaky gaps.
Yeah, and I also set up a couple automations for him that if someone contacts the business, I need to talk to him about this because there's some caveats in how well it's going to work for him. But if someone contacts the business and then he responds to them and a day later, 2 days, whatever he decides it's going to be, they don't respond to him, he gets a reminder.
Yep, absolutely. Because, the other thing is small businesses, and again, this is part of the plan. You have to put this in motion. You have to document it and make it and institutionalize it and make it part of your plan, whether it's through automation or just, human training. Most small businesses, they don't follow up enough. It takes usually 4 to 12 touch points for somebody to be ready to take action through no fault of their own. They're busy, they have things happening in their life. They may want to do business with you, but they get distracted, and then all of a sudden they forgot, oh, what was the name of that business I contacted earlier? They can't remember. They go do another Google search. Voila. Now you've lost that opportunity. Or they pick up the phone and they try to leave a voicemail with you and don't get a live person. It's like now all of a sudden it has become an urgent issue for them because you haven't been following up with them, and they get an answering machine and they're like, yeah, we're not going to leave a voicemail. I'm just going to call the next business. You can fix all of this stuff, and it's pretty easy and cost effective to fix. And as a matter of fact, it's a triple win. It reduces costs, it increases leads, and it improves customer satisfaction. So.
Yeah, follow-up is crucial. We had some storms here in the St. Louis area, and I wanted to get my roof inspected because I didn't think there was any damage, and there wasn't, but we did have some hail. I called, and I get these guys were slammed. We had tornado damage, hail damage. I contacted 11 different roofing companies. 3 of them responded to me. There's your sign.
That's a good case study there, Paul.
Yeah.
That sounds like
wow.
work.
So that's why being consistent in your marketing is super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if the response
right?
was, hey, look, we're just absolutely slammed right now. Give us a call. If it's not urgent, it might be a month and a half before we can get out there. Even just that.
Yeah.
But the acknowledgement, they didn't even acknowledge that I had contacted them.
Yeah. I'm going to qualify my statement. be consistent if you're doing something. If you're not doing something, then don't be consistent in not doing something.
I think I want to add one more thing about,
yeah.
I want to add one more thing about being consistent too, is there's this temptation with a lot of businesses is when things are going great, like, oh, I don't need any more marketing right now, and they dial it down.
Yeah.
And then when things aren't going great, they're like, well, I don't have the money to do marketing, and they don't dial it up. But there's a lag. When things are going great, it doesn't mean they're going to keep going great forever. If you dial your marketing down, you're going to lose your presence. You're going to lose your history if you're running Google Ads, you're going to lose your history in Google Ads. You're going to lose your potentially SEO standing because your traffic is going to drop off. And that's one of the things that Google looks at for determining how valuable a site is how much traffic do they get? It's a chicken or egg problem. I call it the flywheel. You got to spin it up. And if you spin it up and then you stop pushing it, it's going to slow down. And you don't want that to happen. So you've got to be consistent in your marketing and just keep doing it too. Don't assume, well, we've done all we need to do. We're good for now. You won't be good forever. Just keep at it. And, I go back to, it's probably been a couple dozen episodes since I've used the Peter Drucker quote. So it's a good time. There's only two things that make money for any business: innovation and marketing. All the rest are just expenses. Innovation being the product or service you sell, and marketing be how you attract people to sell it to. And if you don't do some form of marketing, you won't have customers to sell for the long term.
One thing we haven't talked about, which I think is really important in all of this, is you have to have the ability to scale if you do have successful marketing. So also make sure that, as you're putting together marketing budgets and marketing plans, if you're over the hurdle, if hopefully we've helped to alleviate some fears and given you some ideas on how you can find people to help you move forward and get this going. Also, don't forget that one of the biggest things that can happen is your business can be overwhelmed, and then it turns into a nightmare for you from a customer deliverability and a customer satisfaction perspective. So keep in mind, customer satisfaction is an essential part of Element. Customer relationships, every step of the way, every interaction that any employee that has from your business with a customer, that is marketing, and it needs to be treated as such. But you also don't want to just be overwhelmed to the point where, like Paul, you were saying, these businesses aren't returning calls because they're so busy and so slammed, and they're thinking, oh, I don't need to return that call. I've already got 50 jobs lined up. Well, you know what? You're never going to call that business again because they didn't respond to you. So they have burned that bridge.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly true, because I know who I contacted. I know who didn't get back to me, and I will never call them for anything.
Yep.
The other thing relative to this fear of success, well, if I have too much work, I can't handle it all. I'm not going to do it. My experience has been it's a lot easier to scale up production than it is to scale up lead generation. So if you keep the lead generation going, if you're getting too much, you can find another subcontractor crew. You can find another person to work in the office and do fulfillment, to pack boxes and ship orders. You can find how to get fulfillment, and you can build partnerships with other businesses. There are plenty of fulfillment vendors, if you will. As Ray Perry, you mentioned Ray earlier. Hey, Ray. Ray calls them fulfillment vendors, right? You can find fulfillment vendors. It's harder to find clients. So when you find them, keep them, and then keep the effort going to find new ones.
Yeah.
The other side to that too is that when people feel like they're going to be overwhelmed, they're probably setting their sights on too low of an ideal client. Because I've had it where we've been working with businesses for a while, and there's this natural evolution to a business that as you get bigger and bigger, you're scaling it up. You start to really zone in and adjust your ideal client or patient sometimes, because you find hey, now that we have more experience, we're bringing in more people. We are able to ideally serve these particular people with this particular service or product in a way that we can't do for these other people. And so you can actually start to build your plan around, we're going to actually start to adjust our are targeting to attract these higher value customers, clients, patients. And when you do that, you often relieve some of the pressure of attracting the lower quality, lower spending clients, customers, patients. And that's a really powerful. Yeah, it's a powerful business concept.
And we talk about things evolving and changing. Your ideal client personas may evolve and change. That doesn't mean you have to get rid of your long-term clients that are maybe on the lower end. What it means for attracting new clients, you're going to shift, the goalposts up a little bit. Good point, Ian.
Any other further thoughts, or should I shut us down because we're pretty much
we've run time? Yeah.
No, this has been a great topic, guys. Thanks for all of your sharing. Ken, Jeff, Paul, this was fantastic. So that's a wrap for today's episode of Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. We hope this discussion has been valuable to you as a small business owner in your marketing efforts. No, not yet. What can and help you avoid these common pitfalls, those feelings that we talked about. Remember, whether it's a lack of time, a fear of spending, or trying to do it all yourself, these challenges are normal. What matters most is taking action one step at a time to build a marketing system that works for you. And if you enjoyed this episode, please smash that subscribe button, leave us a review, share it with another business owner so that we can get our message out to more and more people. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. And until next week, keep calm and market on, folks.